And we're live. Welcome, everybody, and welcome, Gary. This week we have
Hey,
Gary Edward Bloom. How are you doing,
Blum,
man?
the
Blum,
Blum.
man. Fuck, dude. I was literally before we came on air thinking Blum, Bloom, fuck. Okay.
No, it's all right.
I chose the wrong one.
It's been since kindergarten. Every teacher has always want to go Bloom, but it's just fine either
Yeah, it
way.
seems to be it seems to be the default for some reason, but more importantly, honestly, I mean to me at least, is your work, and it's something that I've seen kicked around the internet for a while now.
hmm
Honestly, can't really pin maybe the first time, but I mean I feel like I was seeing your work back in Tumblr days too. I don't know, maybe that's I
I
maybe
think
maybe
I think that
imagining that, but
I never did Tumblr, but definitely Instagram. I think that's
okay.
where I saw you for the very first time, like 10 years ago, probably.
I
Who
just
knows
feel
how
like I saw
long?
your work outside of the context of Instagram for some reason, but maybe that's just because the work itself is so like non-Instagram-ish or whatever you want to say. But I'm more familiar with your work than you by far. I love your work. I'm a big fan.
Appreciate it.
You know, you're working with composition a lot, which it's just to me. I mean, I can look at your work all day. I do look at your work all day, but I would like to know, to begin this all off, is a little bit
Sure.
about you, maybe personally, where your inroads are to the art career. I get the impression that you're probably a lifetime artist, started out as a kid type thing, whatever. But I would love to hear like the specifics of your road, please.
Sure. I guess going way back, the very first thing that I could really remember is when I was just like a little kid. My dad worked nights, so my mom would hang out with her girlfriends and actually do wedding plates, like China painting, like get the white
Mm-hmm.
plates and get the pen and the quill and paint on stuff. And I would be hanging out with the ladies, and my mom would give me like a chipped plate or something, and I would get my little pen and I'd start drawing little worms or whatever on the plates there. So uh, thinking back on it, it was actually like a great introduction to art, because it was something where if you've ever used a quill, if you too much pressure on there, the ink just like flies out. And so like from that very first introduction to art, like I think I learned like that sensitivity to a pencil, to a pen, and all that sort of stuff. And then growing up, yeah, just did the usual stuff as a young kid. My family was I was surrounded by a lot of like macho dudes, and I was like this little skinny kid, so I'm very shy. So I think I kind of retreated to art as something that I could just do by myself and didn't feel like the pressures of all the dudes and having to be that kind of. My dad was like 6'4" and like 250, just this big guy, and I was like very skinny, tall and skinny. So I think from that start, it was something that I could always rely on as like my little safe space. Um,
Mm,
and then kind of going into high school, it was basically like the only thing that I was good at. Math was bad, even though I love math, and even like in my paintings and everything, I'm very precise and very particular. But math is always something I was not good at. So art was my thing. And once again, in high school, also very shy, was not very talkative. So it was like that place that I could be, where people thought like I was cool because I could draw. I could
mhm.
always, representation was something I was always good at. I was always good at copying things. Um, so that was always like something that I could rely on as far as like being a kid and just being shy and that sort of thing. And luckily in high school, my high school art teacher pointed me in the direction of art. My parents were kind of working class. They didn't really push me towards college or any of that sort of stuff. So if she didn't push me in that direction, I probably would have got a job at the 7-Eleven or gas station or, whatever. But she told me, oh, you should go to Chico State. That's where I went to school. They have some great teachers
Mhm.
there. So I was like, okay. And I applied there, the one school I applied to, and I got in luckily, and kind of started my journey in art from that
Where
point.
is so where did you grow up? Where were like
So I'm in San Francisco right now, but I grew up in a little town called Montera, which is like 30 minutes south
okay.
of San Francisco, right along the
Okay.
coast.
When you
So
said Chico State, I was like, I'm not familiar with that school, but that definitely sounds like California, and I really wasn't sure where you were based.
yeah, it's Chico is kind of up in the farmland, like more up towards Oregon, like upstate or northern
Yeah,
California.
yeah.
Um, so got started there, and was really into art for about 2 years. And I think at the second year, there was like some statewide like budget cuts, and all the cool art teachers that I loved, which were all actual artists that were teaching classes and were really interesting. And I was learning about like what it was to be an artist, like an actual artist. They all got cut and kind of left the tenured teachers,
Mm-hmm.
professors there.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys were just like, they'd mailed it in. And I kind of got disenchanted with the whole thing, and was trying to find something else. So I went to my counselor, and he, at that time, Chico State had just started a new design program. And well, I don't know about you, like when I got when in high school, even before I got to Chico, the only avenue was really like, if you're a creative person, it was architecture. That was your choice at that time. So getting introduced, my teacher, my counselor was like, well, have you ever thought about doing graphic design? And I had no idea what that meant. I was like, I don't really know what that is. And he's like, well, you can combine like illustration and typography, and it could be a really great place for you to start. And he's like, I very distinctly remember him saying like, art's great, but when you get out of college, you can get this thing. It's called a job. he's like, so he's like, you can do your design, and you can do your art on the side. And it was a very fortunate thing for me, because I just fell head over heels with design.
Mm-hmm.
It was like right up my alley, typography, learning about like spacing. And it was the first time that I kind of, and you can see it in my work to this day. Graphic design, composition, spacing, grid system, all that sort of stuff was like, I was just like down with it. So that was kind of where college I kind of left art. I never left art, but kind of meandered into learning about graphic design. And then got introduced to a designer named David Carson. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of his name, but he's probably in Hawaii now, but he was down south, surfer. It was kind of the pioneer in putting together art and design. Very kind of rich, tactile, working with like physical objects. Like, here's a painting, I'm putting typography in there. And he would do magazines called Beach Culture, Ray Gun magazine, which is another really great one.
Yeah, Ray Gun is definitely, that's like an iconic magazine.
Yeah. So he was the guy that kind of got me started with really feeling like design and art could be a place that I could live. So I ended up getting a degree in graphic design. And from there, getting out of college, I got my first design job, came back to San Francisco, got my first design job, did that for about a year and a half before I was just like, holy fuck, it was brutal. I found a live workspace. I was there for, I don't know, 3 years or so. But while I was doing my graphic design, 9 to 5 job, or, whatever it was, 7 to midnight job, because it was just nonstop, I had the studio space that I was slowly kind of painting. And over the years at that place doing the graphic design, I finally got together this body of work. And I'd been tinkering. I think I'd lived at home for a while. I was painting my parents' garage, that whole thing. But when I got to this live workspace, was doing artwork kind of in the back studio. And I got to this point where I had a bunch of paintings. And I was like, well, what do I do with these paintings? I think they're pretty cool. So I literally just got my stuff together and just mailed off images to galleries, and just like, okay, I'm just going to send it off. Today, I can't imagine doing that sort of thing. Like, you just don't walk into galleries and be like, here, I'm Gary, here's my work. doesn't work that way. And luckily, one gallery, you know, was in San Francisco, loved the work, and they had this thing called was first Thursdays, and every July they would show a new artist. And this gallery approached me, and she's like, "Well, I'd love to show you as, you know, a solo show in San Francisco, you know, blah blah blah." Being like just a young shit, just kind of cocky, I'd sent out these other invitations or things to other galleries. I was like, "It's like, well, you know, let me think about it. You know, I got these other things going on." She's like, "Okay, yeah, you think about it."
Yeah.
The next morning, I was like, "Oh fuck!" I called her up. I was like, "Yeah, I would love to do a show with you." She's like, "Yeah, that's what I thought." You know. So from there, kind of just got into art, and one of the funny things, great things that happened. One of the rough things that happened is that show sold out. My very first show sold out. I was like, "This art thing's cake. You know, what's the big deal?" From there, I learned a lot of lessons from that point.
Oh
to
yeah.
now.
I mean, I have so many questions just about that. Like, I wonder what were you like, what price point were you at? But we don't need to get into that. I'm just wondering, like, what price point were you selling out a show at?
Oh, back then it was nothing. It was, I think my larger pieces at that time were probably, maybe my biggest one was 40 by 40, something like that. And I think they might have been like $2,000,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, that's dope though.
I mean, this is a while back, you know?
I mean, and that's sick though. Still, to sell out a show is just fucking sick, no matter what price point it's at. So many things I relate to in your story, like the having to make a living after college type thing. I went through that same thing. I was like, this is great. Like, I love painting. I like drawing. Like, I'm good at all this. Like, and it's like, but like, what are you supposed to fucking do? Like, what do you do? Like, nobody could answer that question when I was in college. I was just like, but what do you do? Like, it was like, you show in galleries and then you sell your paintings. And it was like, but what if you don't know anybody? Like, what if you don't have any connections? Like, how do you do that? And then, nobody had answers. So I was like, illustration it is then. That's what I did, It was designer illustration at that point, and I never envied the designers because, and no offense to you, like, because I love design.
I don't do it
whatever,
anymore,
but,
so no offense.
I never envied designers because they fucking seem like business people. They seem like stock traders. They seem like fucking tech dudes or bros. Like they weren't artists to me. It looked like they look like tech bros. That's really what like the comparison is to me. Like just like a tech bro, and it never like resonated. Even the way like a designer dressed and did their hair and shit was like, you're going to business or something. Like, who are you? Like, what are you? Like? It seemed like something they could turn off. Design was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go get cocktails with my friends now, my coworkers, and then I'm not going to think about this until the next day. And it was like, whatever, man, that's not me. Illustration made more sense. And then the design, it seemed like a dog eat dog world too back then of the design, because everybody wanted to be a designer at one point, and it was just like all the design firms were just probably flooded with there seemed to be steep competition in the design field, and I didn't really dig that either. But like your work definitely was enriched by you coming across design. It's very fucking clear, and it seems to me that you're interested in a lot of the things I am interested in when approaching an artwork, where like the content's great and fun to come up with and all that, but like simple things like composition is just so like satisfying. Like composition to me is like so satisfying. Like I'm sure it has something to do with like OCD and just like this like scratching an itch type thing, but like when something clicks, like there's just nothing better. And when I look at your work, I just see like click 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 nonstop, where you're just like you're finding those lines and like because you work with found imagery. I guess let's get into that. Like where are you getting the imagery, and like because your work, given everything you've said already, isn't a given yet. You're actually working a lot with photography too, and you haven't even touched on how you got into photography, etc. But you're working with the unseen lines of a photograph and the unseen dimensions within a photograph of those, the certain design laws and things like that. And it's just endlessly satisfying to me. And I'm wondering, do you get that same satisfaction? It's almost like your work is almost like ASMR type shit, like it's just so perfect that it's just so like it scratches an itch so deeply. So a few questions packaged in there. One being the photography, how, why, where'd that come from? And then second of all, like, do you feel that same way? Are you like scratching that itch? Are you getting the chills? Like when you hit the boom, boom, it like locked in on like the two, I see the coordinates a lot, like you were talking about. So like
Yeah,
I see your pieces locking into a coordinate and being like, boom, that's where it always meant to be.
yeah, there's definitely a certain amount of OCD, without a doubt. There's a controlling element. I think with my work, there's always this need to kind of control where things are and to have things that seem maybe out of place, but they all align when you look at them. They That's one of the biggest compliments you're going to give me. Like you can see that there's things bouncing off of each other, and when you see them as a whole, they connect. There's
Oh yeah.
like
When
in
I'm
the
look at your work, like the OCD is just lighting up. It's just going bing, 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 and I'm like,
Yeah.
all these. There's, in every single one, there's a dozen or so perfect alignments that you can pick out or find, or it's
Yeah.
just
Well, I think,
endlessly beautiful.
yeah, I mean, as an artist, I mean, there's the difference between, I think, not to go on too much of a tangent already, but like there's the
Please tangent
artist,
away.
the artist is making the work, and then there's the viewer. The viewer will come and get a certain hit. Like my paintings, which are kind of, I've, I did paintings for a really long time, and now I've kind of gotten into this phase of photography. Not that I've given up painting, but in my paintings, they became very, very minimal. At first, I
Mm.
was doing, I would do pairs with typography in my very first paintings. I was really into definitions. I would do transfers in the background, so there'd be a definition, and then there would be the object on top in color. Over the years, I kind of started to refine that stuff and actually started to get more interested in those little details in the background and how these little dots connect. And I would do an
Mm.
underpainting knowing that I was going to sand through and there's going to be a little blue up in the corner. And then down in the bottom corner, there was going to be some more sanding done, and that would connect with that dot. And there would be three of those. And I started just really geek out on that stuff even
Wow.
more than the trompe l'oeil painting, which I don't know if you look at my paintings at all, but
I'm looking right now, actually, because
yeah.
I haven't been super familiar, but I'm looking literally right now.
So my paintings are trompe l'oeil, which is a term to fool the eye. So they're photorealistic. They look like there's a piece of paper taped to the canvas, but is 100% painted. Everything that you
Oh,
see in my
what?
paintings are painted. Yes,
Okay.
which is a very difficult thing to convey to people when you're
Yeah.
looking online.
Especially online. Yeah, it's
If you've never
impossible.
seen my work, you don't know it. Everything, and I have to say it over and over again. Everything you're looking at is, even the tape. It looks like it's tape, but it's actually painted. Um, but that started becoming over the years like more and more of an interest to me because I could do it. It's a technique. Realism is a technique. It's a way of getting from A to Z to me. So the minimalism became even more interesting, and that's where like everything started to get shed away and becoming less and less and less and less, to the point where I was even having like gallery owners coming up to me and say, so and so collected this piece, but they're a little worried about the archival quality of the paper and the tape. And I was like, it's painted, right? The whole thing. They're like, well, yeah, but what about the tape? Because they don't want it. They don't want it to peel off. And I'm like, holy shit! Like you represent my work. Like what are you telling people? You know. I've had people come up to my paintings like in a show, and I see them from across the room. Maybe they had like one too many glasses of the shitty white wine, and they're like picking at my painting. Like, hey, dude, like lay off the
It's kind of a
stuff.
compliment, right? Isn't that? That's a
It
pretty
is
huge
it is a
compliment. I mean,
compliment, but it
not from
became,
the gallery though. I've been in that position where a gallery doesn't understand my process at all, and like it's like completely. And they say something to me, you're just like, "What the fuck have you been saying to people?
yeah,
Like what? Like holy
exactly.
shit!"
Exactly. So I started kind of getting like, not, yes, it's a compliment, but it got to the point where I got so good at the realism. That's all that people saw, and I'm spending,
Right,
hours
and that's
like
boring as fuck
meticulously
after a while. I
setting
can't
up a
imagine.
composition and the grid
Doesn't that get
lines that I
boring as
have.
fuck? Don't you get bored? Like what? Like
well, I'm doing photography now, so and I to jump back to that point. There was a point where I was with painting. Once again, I always have the caveat: I love painting. I love
yeah, I want
I
to
love the
ask about
feel of
that.
painting.
Yeah,
But
can
I
we
got to
sidetrack just for a second about that? Like what?
yeah.
Like you must have a connection with painting, then like you must get a satisfaction out of painting because I've never understood somebody that paints photorealistically, like what satisfaction there is in it, really. Like besides, like okay, I represented that perfectly great. Like because like I would get the most satisfaction, or the same, I should say, of just actually taking a piece of paper and putting it on there and taking a photo of it. You
Yeah.
know what? Where is the satisfaction for you in that process? Because
Well,
it takes forever, right?
it takes forever. There's a satisfaction. I mean, I started. I mean, back to high school, I always got the satisfaction of being able to draw something. I knew it was good because it looked like the thing that I was trying to represent.
Like
So
yeah, you
that's
had
how,
like a
like,
you had like a gauge.
with abstract, you're like, is it good? Like, how do you know it's good? Where's the line, the beginning, the end?
Yeah.
I've completely switched that now. I mean, if you
Well,
ask
that
me, like,
makes a
what
lot
are
of
some of your
sense.
favorite artists? I would not name one. I don't even know one realist artist. It's all abstract artists.
But that
It's
makes a
all
lot of sense,
photography.
honestly. Like
Um,
it like for me, I can totally understand needing some sort of like gauge of like especially if you're starting out or something, needing
yeah,
like some sort of gauge, and that's a brilliant actually way. I've never even thought of it that way. So thanks for
and
that perspective.
there in my later paintings, um, it was more about, like, there's realism and then there's this abstract element. There's minimalism happening. So
Mhm.
duality is a huge part of my work. I
At
love
the bottom, you
duality.
you do the play with like the spray looking like are those
Yes,
spray marks even also painted?
everything's painted. So what I
Okay.
started getting into, and duality can be everything from, like, a blob of color to a straight line. It could be black and color, white and color, these two conflicting elements in one place playing off of each other, so you can appreciate the other one because the other one is, looking face to face. So I was starting to do realism and kind of more abstract in the same place. So what I found interesting, to try and get away from that OCD and, like, anal retentive, like, I'm painting pieces of dust on this piece of paper. I started, like, in the back, where am I? In the background, like, this stuff you see on my wall there, I was like,
Mm.
that is the coolest shit I'm painting right now. So I started to incorporate, I would paint the realism up here, and I started to do the palette actually on my painting. And I
Mhm.
started to see, like, I love the colors that are playing between these two things. I have this photorealism up here, and I have this abstract painting down below, and they're speaking to each other. And that was like a whole new, like, world that I started getting into with painting, that I just loved. But I started getting more and more interested in the abstract and the minimalism of the work, more than the painting itself, the trompe l'oeil painting. But to get back to, like, what it is about the realism that I love, there is this sense. Photorealism isn't just like it looks exactly like the thing. Yes, it does. But if you put them side by side, which I've done in shows before, like the actual object that I'm painting and then the painting, there's a certain quality that comes through in the painting itself, because the way that I paint things are just washes, like 30
Mhm.
different washes to build up to what looks like a piece of paper. So there's this, like, illumination, I feel, that comes from the painted thing, that is not
Mhm.
there, that's kind of dead. If I were to just slap a piece of paper
Mhm.
on a canvas, it doesn't have that light from within it. Not to get too kind of geeked out on that sort of stuff. Then there's just there's just this then there's then there's then there's just the simple joy of, like, okay, so I paint this thing, I'm walking to my studio, and I do, like, the double take. I was like, wait, is that, like, I catch myself looking at my painting thinking that's the real thing, like it's the actual piece, like, stuck to the wall. So I kind of get that high from, like, tricking myself that it's the actual object, stuck to the canvas when it is actually painted. um, so that's kind of what I was really interested towards the end with my painting, but it got to the point to kind of segue into photography.
Yeah.
I was there's a place near San Francisco called Headland Center for the Arts, and I got accepted into it. It's like a 2-year program that you apply for. They give you studio space. It's out like near the Golden Gate Bridge, but out towards the water. It's just beautiful. You're out in nature. And so I was getting ready for a show out there, actually at Bergamot Station. I used to show with Ruth Bachhoffner. I'm not sure if you know her, or she's not there anymore. But I was getting ready for a show, and I was doing my paintings. But while I was there, and this is part of some of my newer photography pieces. There was this building out in the middle of a field, and it was called the Target House.
Mm-hmm.
And I would stop, and it's this little white building in this vast, like, it's called this Tennessee Valley, nature everywhere, and there's this little white house. And I just loved it. It was like, it kind of connected with the way that I center all of my objects in my painting, with this, minimal white field around it. So I just started taking pictures of it, centered this thing. There was a tree. Every time I would drive by, I would take my little picture with my iPhone, take my little picture, and I'd go to my studio. And I started, going to the studio, and I'm like, I have to get ready for the show. So I'm doing my paintings, but I'm really digging this photography stuff I was kind of playing around with. Got to the point where, like, I didn't really want to do my paintings. I guess I was bored, it kind of got to this place. I don't know if I've ever even mentioned this before, but I felt like I was painting Gary Edward Blum paintings. And it was just kind of like, I know what this is going to look like. I try and trick myself, like, mess things up, and I overpaint and kind of get some freshness to it. But I was just kind of I was not feeling it. And I was just like, it's not a good feeling when you come to the studio and you're like, okay, all right, let's paint today. Let's
Like, it's a job.
Yeah, like it's a job. Which, sometimes it does feel like a job. Art is a job, and it can feel that way with certain aspects of it. But I was just like, all I wanted to do was play around with the photography stuff. There was something fresh, something unknown. I didn't know what the end result was going to be, and that was kind of exciting, So what I was starting to do was I was printing out these iPhone pictures, and I was painting on them, because I didn't want to just, like, I'm not a photographer per se. Like, we take photographs, you take photographs. I don't know if you consider yourself a photographer or not. I know you show,
I'm the best photographer ever, bro.
It looks like it. But you know what I'm saying. But maybe people don't know you for photography. Anyway, I personally didn't. I took photographs for myself. I don't consider myself a photographer.
Absolutely.
But I was just getting way more interested in what photography could give me as, like, a creative outlet.
Almost like a unknown element, like a unknown element, or like a randomized element to your work, rather than like the tedious going to the studio. I know exactly what I'm going to paint. I know what this is going to look like before I even paint it. With photography, it's kind of, there's an element of it being out of your hands. I personally appreciate a good amount of my work being out of my hands.
Yeah, and that's, to kind of backtrack a little bit to the painting stuff. That's the kind of thing that I was jealous or envious of other artists that seemed to be freer than me. Like, I felt like I was just so, like, tight. Everything's so tight. Everything's so perfect. Everything's got a place that there was no, like, freedom in it. And that's why I think I gravitate towards, like, abstract artists that that are just throwing around paint, or what seemingly throwing around paint. And photography was kind of giving me that, and this sense of freedom. And with the iPhone, like, just taking pictures, and I would go back and look at them and print them out, and then kind of that design part started coming back into my work. Printing and playing with paper, and the putting paint on top of it, and still getting my hands dirty, but kind of going in this different direction of photography, and kind of getting design elements in there. I was kind of mixing. I would print them out with, like, little descriptions, the typography on the bottom.
What were you always using an iPhone, or did you ever, like, choose to use anything else, or was it always, did you stick to the iPhone?
Mainly iPhone. I have a Leica. I
Nice.
struggled. Well, that was also a little issue that I was kind of going through, was like getting too involved in like
Yep.
what equipment to use. Okay,
Yep.
iPhone.
It's like same. It's like same with music, right? Whereas like a musician can go out like like they can dork out forever on their fucking gear, but it like, well, that music you're making is boring as shit, bro. So like, good on you, but like it sucks.
Yeah,
I asked about the iPhone because, and that's quite a comparison you make with the Leica. That you have a Leica and an iPhone; those are almost two opposite ends of the spectrum, you
hmm
could say. So I would almost say I'll take an iPhone over a Leica any day, any fucking day. Like there's something that the iPhone did for photography that I can't explain, and that's still maybe you can, maybe we can talk about this even, but like, so I have nice cameras too. I got a couple, but I find myself gravitating to iPhone photos literally, unless I'm
yeah.
doing portraiture, unless I'm shooting portraiture in a studio. That's when I prefer my, like an SLR of some kind.
hmm
But almost any other thing, literally, like maybe my art too, I like to shoot with SLR, but almost anything else, day to day, anything when I'm traveling and stuff, I always prefer my iPhone photos. There's something that happens. I don't know if it's the lens. I don't know if it's what it is, but it's like, there's something different about those photos that come out on an iPhone that nothing else compares to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For me, it was there. Obviously, I just had that in the beginning. I just kind of had the iPhone. I was taking pictures, and that's what I was using, like through like social media and all that sort of stuff.
It also has
What?
the documentarian feel of it though too, of like you were just driving and able to do that with an iPhone. You're able to just shoot off the hip at any point. I was shooting a lot off my bike for a while and stuff like
Yeah.
that. There's something to be said for that for sure.
Well, there's definitely like you pick up the Leica, and it's like, okay, we are now taking photographs. I am a
Hmm.
photographer now, and there's this weird. I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
But there's like this mental thing, like, okay,
Mm.
I'm taking official pictures now. Even though it's digital and whatever, but there's something about it. And I actually had an issue in the beginning where I think we may have talked about this in the past, where I was doing these photographs, and I was picked up by a gallery, and I'm showing these photographs, and I was like, oh shit, dude, I hope no one asked me like what I'm using. Because
We did talk about this.
do I tell them it's an iPhone? Because then they're gonna be like, iPhone, like this
Like
isn't
fuck
art.
off, man.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
like what is this? Like, okay, it's like, am I gonna lie and tell them this is actually the Leica photograph? Like, you
That's so
know.
funny.
So there was this kind of stigma attached to it. I was nervous about, do I get a
I get it.
real camera?
I get it.
Is my art anything? Is it less than because of iPhone? But like, so in the background here, the one above me, but this is an iPhone picture. These are Leica pictures.
Okay.
This is a Hasselblad picture.
Wow.
These right here are iPhone pictures. So I kind of gone through the gamut, and
Hasselblad is even like, that's, yeah, real
that
high end.
well, that
So
was the medium format. I just wanted I rented it just because I wanted to see. And
okay.
the problem I started running into was like I have this duality nature of like I love, and it goes back to the trompe-l'oeil painting. I love super crisp details. Like I
Hmm.
want to make huge photographs that are super tight, but that's something different. And I with the iPhone pictures, I'm printing them out. I'm doing digital negatives. I'm throwing them on the studio. I'm scraping them.
Yeah.
There was something less precious about it that I just was
And
like, that's
once you,
more,
yeah,
that has
once you
more of
print
a
something too,
personality. Yeah.
yeah, and once you print something, it's like, unless you're printing it in really high quality, it doesn't matter where that image came from. It kind of like equates everything at a certain level with the printing, in my opinion. But I know what
Exactly.
you mean about the like using iPhone and like, is this all right? Can I tell people? My first I released a zine before I ever released my first book with Sacred Bones called Sinking, and it was just like a little zine, and it was printed risograph.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get into talking about printing techniques with you, because I know that you get into all that. But we
Yeah.
printed a risograph zine, and I found it very important because this was 2016 or 2017. I found it really important that everybody know these are iPhone photos. Like I didn't want
Mm.
anybody being, thinking like any other, but it was like, so the explanation was like iPhone photos by Jesse Draxler. It wasn't just like photos by Jesse Draxler.
Yeah.
And so like now now, in my opinion, when I hear like, oh, that's an iPhone photo and it's part of a fine piece of art or a major work of an artist,
Hmm.
I respect that more than I respect, like I respect it all, obviously, photography is
Yeah,
photography, whatever. But if
yeah,
I hear that's just an iPhone photo, there's something about that to me where it's just like that's so much more something. There's something special about that. It means it was probably shot off the cuff, randomly, maybe. Just there's so many things that go into it, but it's funny how that has shifted over time for me, at least. That I'd prefer when I hear it's like an iPhone photo.
yeah.
That's it's really funny though, living through these times where we have to like, is this all right? Like, people are doing that with Mid-Journey now, right? Like,
Hmm.
people are just minting Mid-Journey shit, man. And we were worried about our fucking phone photography, man. People are just typing shit now and being like, it's art. Look it, I'm a great artist. So anyways, photography does lead into printing because you kind of have to get into both simultaneously. Maybe not, mandatory, but coming from a tactile background, you do. I'm a tactile person.
Hmm.
You're a very tactile person, as we can even see in your studio. So, um, was photography what led you to printing techniques in general, or were you interested in printing techniques before? Because from what I see, at least, I don't know if you have a studio of your own or not, or you work with, a local print studio, but like you're doing risograph, you're doing, screen printing, all these different printing techniques. Um, if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Well, the printing part comes back to graphic design.
Okay.
Yeah, so even growing up, my dad was a bookbinder. So even as
I
a
was
little
just
kid,
gonna ask you about
even
like letterpress and stuff. Do you go that
yeah,
far with all that
so
shit? Okay.
even at a young age, like I'm doing my mom's side was a very creative kind of family. My dad, having worked in a bindery facility, they had the big, huge Heidelberg. So when I was like 10 years old, he would take me to work, and these big machines just like cranking, and it was 4-color process. So CMYK, you put those four together, and you have an image. So I think with printing and paper and that tactile feel, even in my paintings using papers, I just love that feeling of it. Um, so printing comes from design for sure. And now I was lucky enough to everything's done printed. A lot of it now there's digital printing, which is great. But there's something about the 4-color process that I just
Mhm.
love. The smell of it, the ink, the whole
Mhm.
the whole thing.
Mhm. Yeah, the smell
Um,
of it. I know what you
the,
mean.
yeah, the smell of it. So those things are what kind of drive my interest in like the stuff like making prints, doing screen printing, just printing out things and painting on top of them. It's like one of the first things I loved about your work was like
Mm.
seeing you be able to like, cut that out and pasting them up and painting over it. Like I was like, yep, that's that's
I
where it's
love
at.
print media, like of all kind. I never knew how to like really explain it though. I never knew how to like I still don't really know how to explain like what I do or like why or like what it is, but there's something about print media that I love, but it extends beyond art even. Like I have to buy books to read them. I can't read on screens. Like I love books.
Hmm.
Like I go to the comic shop and buy comic books. Like I have to feel stuff to like, but I
Yeah.
I just love the tactile nature of everything. But yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the definitely there's that feeling of wanting, to make things, and I've been doing a lot of that. Actually over like the pandemic, I started getting back into, wanting to make things, like make books, make objects, and make
yeah,
make the artist book, make something that's like it's not. And I love to collect artist books. I love books that like are well designed, that use good
yeah,
paper,
nothing
because
better.
there's it's an art object. It's not
Yeah,
just something to show you some images. There's something more to it. And I love artists that do that sort of thing, and wanting to get back to like feeling that printed thing,
it's so yeah. I
in
mean,
your
I
hands.
like I run a record label, which you probably know or whatever. But my partner in the record label used the term object fetishism, which is kind of funny or whatever. But like I get it. Like I get like when I get like a really good book that has the cloth, maybe a cloth hardcover, some blind
Hmm.
embossing. It's binded really nice. The paper's nice, man. Sometimes like you don't even like look through it or like or really have like taking in the contents, but you're just like absorb. Like I'll just hold it for a while. It's
Yeah.
weird. I don't. Does that sound weird? But
It
like
doesn't
I'm
sound
just
weird
like
at
in
all
like
because I could
turn
show
it
you
in my
some.
hands and stuff. You know, like just like flip and look at the back and like just turn it weird in my head. It sounds super
Yeah.
weird, but like it is. It's this like object fetishism of just like absorbing the presence of something or like taking in all the like the sensory, you know, the feeler
Hmm.
sensory, you know, which
Hmm.
a lot of people um don't really go into, I feel like, you know, and I think we're talking about it right now that, you know, we enjoy doing that, but I feel like a lot of people are losing that tactile, like, you know, even the grain of a paper, like you were talking about or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, when it comes to art can change your perception of your own work and in the ways that you relate to it and stuff. Yeah, I think I'm not going to say like, oh, that's a shame and we're losing that or whatever, but to me, like a tactile sense of art and a relationship with an object is so meaningful. Like,
Yeah.
I brought this up many times before, but are you
Hmm.
familiar with the artist Jim Hodges?
Yes. Yeah.
uh in a talk I saw, he talked about this idea of, so like he has a studio and studio assistants that could do a lot of his work for him. He does a
Hmm.
lot of tedious type things like sewing things together and stuff. A lot of that shit he says he just does himself because his reason was that like he felt that when you spend time with an object like that, it becomes more meaningful and that you're injecting like yourself and your essence into the piece, you
Hmm.
know, into the object that you're spending time with. And I totally believe that too. And I feel it when I see certain pieces of art at
Yeah.
museums and galleries. In my own work, I like literally try to imbue like shit tons of it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm trying to manufacture, like behind me here, this is a painting or a panel
Yeah.
that, you know, I've had for 6 years, and it maybe had like eight different paintings on it or eight
Hmm.
different, you know, collage works on it.
Yeah.
But when this is final and it's hanging in a gallery and it has this final piece, you know, to me it will just emanate. You know, people will have like a hard time around it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, the tactile
Yeah.
nature of things can really change how somebody perceives it, even if they're not visually aware. Do you agree?
I totally agree, and that's not to jump into the NFT thing really quickly, but there's something about like seeing work in a gallery. I love NFT stuff. We can talk about that, and it has its obviously. I love that as well, but I will never not want to like show in a gallery or make like physical work. There's
Yeah.
something there's nothing that can replace that. You know, trying to replicate that in an image that you're going to see on your screen, it can have a certain amount of feeling to it, but not until you're standing in front of something. Like I don't know if you would get that feeling if you shot that piece behind you and showed it as an NFT or just an image, if that would come across, and being able to be
Hmm.
there and see it, to see the shine, to see the matte, to see the semi-gloss, to see that little
Hmm.
tiny edge that's there.
Exactly.
I think that, to me, that's like, that will always be like probably my favorite like experience. And even with my paintings and things, like, I was trying to convey that stuff online or in photographs is like impossible. You
It's
have to
really
you have to
difficult.
be able to see it. And
It's
books
a
and things like
different
that
tech.
are the same thing.
It's a different technique I found, like, so that, you know, everybody's familiar with my story by now, but like back in the day, making the shift towards wanting my work to look great on the screen versus in person because that's where more people are going to see it. And I found myself,
Hmm.
all those things that you're talking about and stuff, you know, are the hurdles that I came up to a little bit because I've always
Yeah.
felt my work was so imbued with these details that I realized like most people are not even registering ever, you know, especially digitally, but finding ways of kind of pulling that out in different ways using texture,
Hmm.
you know, and like the other subtle grains and shit like that
Hmm.
can start. But I'm kind of hoping too in that I'm sure the technology is good enough already, but if we are able to like in VR maybe see that subtleness
Mm.
and texture of a
Yeah.
piece or something might be interesting. But I don't think you're gonna get that same piece. I'm thinking of like I'm thinking the grand like Richard Serra. You know, you're never gonna get like the dense fucking black
Yeah.
of something like that in you know in any sort of digital space. It's just not gonna happen. You know, where
Yeah.
In a lot of in work, even like where it's not even where it's almost the opposite of textured work. I just saw a lot of um fuck, what's his name? Anish Kapoor
Mhm.
at the Venice Biennial, and he's working with like immense blackness that protrudes, but when you're looking at it, it's just flat. And then when you turn,
Yeah.
maybe there's a digital way of doing that. But do you have any ideas about this, or like what is your where like but you said, so you bridged it, you breached this conversation where you would like the NFT thing, and we can even scratch that word, but like just your digital practice, since we're talking about the physicality and how much we appreciate that. What is your technique or your approach to your digital practice to kind of convey some of those same sensibilities that you may have with your physical work, and the things that you enjoy about your practice in general, and convey those digitally, and then specifically through your minting?
Um, the one quick thing that I think is quite ironic is that I spent my entire career going back to the painting thing to, the okay, these are all painted, everything's painted, but everyone thought it was like mixed media and all that sort of stuff. Trying to convince people, let them know that no, my paintings are 100% painting. I've run into the exact opposite with NFTs. Everyone thinks the work that I'm doing, not everyone, many people are like, so do you ever sell like the physical piece that you're minting? All of my work is digitally composed. So I mean, little pieces exist. Not I would say 75% of it is all digitally composed. So they don't actually exist in real life, like
But
as an image, as a
yes,
piece. They're
but the
individual.
individual elements often you have all physically, correct?
They are physical pieces. Yes,
All of them.
all of them are physical
Yeah.
pieces, but then they can be composed together. So I've been having to let people know that this doesn't actually exist as a single physical piece.
So
It's
are your
it's
pieces
it's composed.
interchangeable? Do you see them that way? Do you have vast folders of like
Hmm.
blue squares, red squares, or
Hmm.
just squares in general,
Hmm.
and then photos and blah blah blah, and then you can arrange, and you're really just, I love that game. You create little games for yourself. But yeah, I
Exactly.
love that. Like
So
you
it's the
create puzzles
same.
for yourself.
It's the same kind of idea, and it kind of started even with like Instagram, where I would do my iPhone pictures and I would just layer them within like an app, and I would post those, and people would ask like, are those for sale? Are you selling those? I was like, no, they're not for sale. Like they're kind of digital sketches. Like I wouldn't sell them. NFT and this kind of idea came along. I was like, this is like the perfect place. This is where these things should live. I got really excited about that. And so, scanning in a bunch of things and layering things together and playing with the composition, that's kind of where my pieces generally will start. I've done some pieces that are, physical work that have been scanned in, that I'll manipulate a little bit. Um, Once again, kind of like playing with a lot of different ideas and seeing what feels good, what feels right. Um, but ultimately, with the minting, do you mean like how I go about minting, or what?
No, no, I meant just meant the work that you're minting, and you already talked about it, so that satisfies the question. I didn't know though. I wasn't. I guess I didn't really think about it, but I would have assumed that those were physical pieces. Maybe. I guess I didn't think about it though. I guess I didn't give a shit.
There are some there. I mean, you'd have to go through like my mints, but there are some that are, that I've done some collabs with that are physically printed and painted
Mhm.
on and scanned in as a piece. But those are like, I might do like a one of one, and if you get the physical piece. But those are very rare. Only because I'm still kind of unsure where that line is for me between like my physical work and what you present as an NFT.
Mhm.
And do I want would I just do one of my salt prints, let's say, on a piece of paper and do an NFT of that? I don't know if I would want to give anyone the physical object. So I've kind of been keeping that work digital, is in digital compositions, as opposed to here's a piece I made out here. It's now a JPEG. Um, I find the space much more interesting and creatively satisfying to kind of itch that the digital composition, because that's where it feels like, to me, that's what feels what it's best for, to kind of that kind of outlet. Although it's, like I said, it's causing some confusion and like, what are we looking at, and all that sort of stuff.
I embrace the confusion a lot. I've dealt with a lot of that confusion myself, but like I just don't. I just push it now. I just play into the mystery of, like of how'd you do that? I don't know, fuck it. Doesn't matter. Like a lot of the times now, for my own personal work, I just create multiple versions of it, where there's like a physical version that I'll play in the gallery, a digital version for, minting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it interesting, each different artist's approach, and particularly yours. I'm finding your practice more and more interesting, honestly. The more you talk about, because like I said, I didn't know those were digital, and like the phone, and like I've always loved the content you're capturing, and you kind of talked about how finding the target house, which I love that you brought up right away, because I've seen it in your work, or I think I own some pieces of the target house even, or some object
Those are
editions.
my very first mints were the target house.
They're so good. They're so great. In the Target house, there's something about that too. And I always thought of Target like the store, because I'm from Minnesota, or I lived in Minnesota for a long time, and I've worked for Target before. I've done commission work for Target, and so I thought maybe you did work for them. But anyways, where was I going here? This I wanted to ask about like the printing processes, and like what your own studio, I guess, was like from there. Do you have all these printing processes in studio, or do you work with a printing studio? I've seen like your videos of, creating books and stuff, and yeah, I guess that's where I want to go with the books and the printing, because you mentioned your dad was a binder or something like that, or work. So I mean, there's a direct correlation, I would have to assume, between that.
Well, I like with everything that I do, there's a lot of cross pollination. So I do everything from, Xerox prints to doing 4-color process, having someone print my work, go to like the high-end photography, printing places to have things done. It just really depends on the final outcome. The pieces right behind me are actually newsprint, and they're kind of larger scale, and I just love the way that they look. And
I love newsprint too.
It's a lower quality per se, but like right now they're aging, and they get like that kind of yellow feeling.
Yeah.
And that like, if I were to get them printed 4-color and like, a proper way to print something, and it's like the official like book, it does lose a bit of that kind of physicality and life.
So do you do anything to newsprint when you're using it? Sorry to interrupt. I'm just particularly curious. Do you ever like because it's non-archivable? That's kind of the issue. You could sell that, but the buyer would have to know like this is going to change drastically over time.
I don't necessarily use newsprint for like an artwork that I would show in a gallery.
But don't you want to?
I do.
That's what I'm asking. I'm like,
to be honest, I mean, these pieces have been hanging on my wall, and I was like, I would love to just like, I'm printing these things. What if I print the newsprint, pin it to my wall, let it age, and then frame that as the piece? Like, even with like the blue, which is like another color on the page, that blue line that's in between the tree.
But would you then put like a archival coat on it, or spray it with an archival viners to stop it from this aging process?
Maybe not. If anything, I would use UV
glass.
UV plexi for sure. Maybe let the buyer know like you don't want to just like put it right in the sun. I don't know do you know the artist Megan Rippenhoff by any chance? She does work that it's physically made. Like she'll put paper in like treated paper in the ocean water, and then the chemical reaction happens, and there's drips, and it's all this stuff. But and there's like pieces of stuff from the ocean on it, and she'll have those framed, and it's part of her work that she lets you know over time. This is going to probably shift color a little bit, but it's part of her process. So, I mean, personally, once again, going back to like the iPhone thing, if an iPhone is what works for the end result, like who gives
Mhm.
a fuck? Like if it's a
Mhm.
Leica, if it's an iPhone, I mean, that's where I think we kind of understand that by now. Like I'm kind of got to that point. It took me a
Mhm.
little while, but I'm totally comfortable with it. And if thinking about like Warhol or something, like the kind of things that he would do, he's like pissing on paintings and whatever. Like that's what makes the work.
Yeah.
So no matter how you get to that point, the art is the art. And I think that's one of the more beautiful places I think we're at right now as artists, as art in the world, is while there's no maybe dominant art form, like anything can kind of go. At least that's how I'm starting to view it. Like whether it's an iPhone, whether it's a Leica, does it really matter? If you're Ansel Adams, then sure, maybe there's the practice, there's the dark room, and that's your thing. That's what the piece is about. If you're someone that uses an iPhone and prints on newsprint, and that's your ultimate outcome is that result, well then, I think that's up to the artist to decide whether that's something they're comfortable and they're happy to show. Well, then, why not?
Yeah. It's like post media artist or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to give up this fucking obsession or giving a fuck about those kind of trite elements, really. But
And
you just took a drink of your coffee.
yes.
I don't know if you wanted to say something, but I was gonna bring up your project real quick. The mug shots. I don't know if you're still doing that or not, but
The mugshots are. I don't officially do them anymore. I did 100 of them, and that was like more than enough. Uh,
did it become a burden to yourself? You're like, why'd I do this?
it was
I don't want to
brutal. It
fucking
was
shoot my coffee this morning.
around number 60. I was like, oh fuck, I got like 40 more to go. Like, you kidding me?
Well, I'm stoked to have a couple
Um,
then. If you cut it off at 100.
no, it was an awesome project. It was kind of a fun thing to do. It started off as just a little morning, GM to a group I belonged to. I think you were a part of it there for a minute. And I would just take a picture of my coffee, and one of the people in the group were like, "We should mint those things." I was like,
The
"Yeah, you."
common the
Yeah, I
common
was like,
phrase you hear
I
a
was
lot.
like,
Mint that. You
"You
should
should
mint
mint
that.
that." I was like, "This is like, when I was just starting. I was like, I don't. That seems like a kind of an odd thing to do, but people are like, oh, you should do it." And I was like, okay, that sounds, I'll give it a shot. But it wasn't something I thought it would. I felt uncomfortable. Like, okay, I'm going to make money off this because I'm just taking a picture of my coffee cup. Of course, with anything, it turns into like a very formal, like, okay, this has got to be this way, and I'm adding typography and everything. But I ended up thinking that the best thing to do was to sell them as one of ones, and then keep the tes to buy artwork of other artists. So I started doing that, where every piece that's sold, I would buy artwork that was 5 tes or less. Because when I first started with doing all the NFT work, I just loved how the community of artists were so supportive. And if you needed anything, or if you needed help, like trying to figure out how to connect your wallet or whatever, like someone was always there to help. And I just really felt like this would be a great opportunity to kind of give back to the community that was like helping me so much. And as an artist that I've been doing this stuff for a long time, it's not like I was doing this to like make money and survive. It was kind of like, okay, this is a new creative outlet. So mugshots kind of became this way of wanting to help maybe artists that were they're selling their stuff for like 2 tes, and it means a lot to sell something for a couple tes. So finding maybe underrepresented artists and buying that work, and of course seeing things that I like, and using that money, using that tes to make a collection of work.
That's really
Um,
cool.
so that was very satisfying. It was. I'm still doing it. I still kind of release one here or there. I might be doing something different in the near future with it, and I still have
Could you
some
talk
more.
about Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was gonna say
Sorry.
I still got some more tes in the bank, so we'll
Go
be
ahead.
going around looking for some art to buy.
Could you talk a little bit more about your entry then into Tez?
Uh, yeah, that I guess I've been doing it for a little over a year now. And oddly enough, the first time I heard of it, I was like sitting in a parking lot listening to sports radio, and they were talking about like how you could own this video of Michael Jordan's dunk, like his famous like the dunk. And I was like,
And can you place this in time real quick?
This is probably like a year and a half ago, maybe almost 2 years ago now.
So like late 2020.
Yeah, I mean, this was like I don't even think. I don't think Sotheby's hadn't been doing anything yet. I'm blanking on the guy's name that did the $60 million Sotheby's sale.
Beeple.
I don't think Beeple had actually happened yet.
Okay.
Anyway, so I at first, of course, like I was thinking, not of course, but I was thinking like, who the fuck, like, buy, like, why would you buy that? Like the usual stuff. Like when someone first hears about, people are selling these things, why
you didn't want Jordan's dunk, man?
Like, why would someone want to pay for that? I mean, I guess because they were equating it to like digital, like
trading cards.
And I was like, okay, I guess I could see that. And then fast forward to maybe a year and a half ago, I found myself on Nifty Gateway, and I'm looking through that stuff. And the reason I was there was because, I could actually buy it with a credit card because I was kind of unsure about cryptocurrency and all that sort of stuff. And looking through those,
so you were like, I'm down with NFTs, but I don't know about crypto.
I don't know. Like, I gotta connect my wallet. Like, how do I do that? Like, Ethereum. Like, what? I don't know. Like, I'm not like an idiot with like.
So you weren't using crypto or the collecting crypto before, or like
I was not doing any.
Crypto?
I was not even doing any of that stuff. I didn't even have a Twitter account. Like, I had to like start Twitter from like zero. But I was looking through like the artists.
Well, I find it to be uncommon that an artist gets into NFTs. Hate that word, but without being into crypto beforehand.
Yeah, I was the complete opposite. I guess. But I was looking through the work, and I was like, from Instagram. I don't know if you know Nate Hill or not.
Yeah.
But I was like, who'd be really good with this? And this is me, like, I didn't know what Nifty really was. I saw Pac on there, and I was like, oh, that's cool. His work's cool, but it's like $1,200 for this spinning cube. Like, why would you buy that? Of course, now I wish I would have bought that. But I was like, who'd be really good on this thing is Nate. So I DM Nate. I'm like, hey Nate, have you ever heard of like NFTs and like this Nifty Gateway? He's like, yeah, I'm on it. Like, oh shit. So Nate was the one that got me into it, and at that point, he's like, I think your work would be great. He's like, there's all these places that you could start, but I think you should start with Hikek Nunk, Hen.
Well, that must have been what, early 2021?
Yeah. I would say so. So I think maybe September, something like that. That I got into it. I mean, it was actually kind of towards the end.
I was going to just say, because like late October, wasn't it, that they shut it down or whatever?
Yeah,
November.
Maybe it was a little bit before then. My memory is shitty.
Okay,
with, like,
yeah. But anyways,
exactly.
Interesting. So you got into Hikek Nunk.
So yeah,
golden era of Tez.
Yeah, so he got me into that, and I just like at first, I was like throwing my coffee against the wall. I was just like, it was super frustrating, but Nate like stuck with me the whole entire time. Any questions?
How so? What do you mean frustrating about like?
I like just trying to get I don't even remember what it was now. Like,
which side though? Do you mean like the tech side of it?
The tech side.
Okay.
The tech side was frustrating, like trying to get everything to like link up and trying to figure out what wallets to use and all that sort of like all that like kind of the techie side of it.
Sure.
I started minting and everything. I was worried about like, how do you do it? Where do you do it? How many do you do? Like getting ready to okay, I'm gonna mint now. Is it actually thing gonna work? Like, and even the site itself was like super dark webby feeling.
Which is awesome.
Which I ultimately fell in love with. I was like, when kind of it went away, I was like, no, like this is I don't. What else am I going to use? Object? Like I still hate the way Object looks.
It grew on me.
That's kind of like the very quick way of saying how I kind of got into it.
Have you minted anywhere else?
I have not. I think I tried one time on oh my God,
Foundation?
Foundation. But I like all my people are more Tez based.
Yeah,
And I've,
I hear that.
I haven't gotten into Ethereum at all. It seems like kind of a different beast, or it is
Mm-hmm.
a different beast.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, like it's something where I just enjoy, minting on Tez. It feels comfortable. It's just something. Like I said, I'm not that I don't want to make money doing it, but it's not like I don't want to put any pressure on like, okay, getting into Ethereum and how does that relate? Maybe you have more insight into that. Like how does the work that you do on Foundation and Ethereum relate to kind of not the less the pieces that are less money on Tezos,
Mm-hmm.
and how those kind of cross pollinate and how people view those things? It's kind of like, okay, I'm not gonna get into that too much. I would like to, but it's just I haven't crossed
It's yeah.
that part
The
yet.
for the first time in my career, like it's been advantageous to work in a multitude of ways, and then also advantageous to create a lot of work because yeah, for me that separation has been interesting as well, trying to go back and forth between Tez and Ethereum, but I've struck a balance that I'm very comfortable with and that
Yeah.
completely reasonable to me. You know why these pieces, certain pieces would be minted on Ethereum as a one of one and why they would have value as
Hmm.
compared to, an addition on Tez or even a one of one maybe on Tez. But I think all of it's shifting too. I'm hoping so. I think one
Hmm.
of ones are becoming a lot more common on Tez.
Hmm.
And I think we're gonna see a flourishing, of artwork, both in value as well as quality, on Tez.
Yeah.
I'm almost sure of it. It really. Do you find at least like so you're working in the fine art, I guess you would call it traditional gallery kind of system. Do
Hmm.
you see that world coming towards the minting crypto world at all? Like because I do personally, I'm seeing it slowly, and when I see it coming, it seems like it's going towards the Tez. Are you feeling that as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, galleries, of course, I think they're as they might well be a little nervous about getting into something new and how that's going to affect sales and how artists are kind of more independent when it comes to
Hmm.
your minting and how that's all going to work. But I think the longer that this is around, the more the galleries can't not get involved. um, what line that is, I'm not sure. Maybe when there's more money to be made and people are really feel comfortable
Mm.
buying work that way. When there's some kind of value created within like what you're minting and what you're showing physically in a gallery. um, you know I think that's a spot to me that's kind of very interesting, how that's going to kind of play out and how galleries are going to handle themselves. You see some of the bigger like galleries kind of diving into it. um, but I mean, around here, like in San Francisco, there's maybe one gallery that I can think of that kind of has integrated work online with physical work. For the most part,
In
there's
a
not much.
legitimate way?
Yeah, like what the artist is like, from the concept of the work is that we're kind of using both mediums and kind of playing back and forth between
Cool.
the two as a way of maybe holding the viewer's hand or collector's hand, like, okay, there's physical work here, but then if you hold your phone up, it'll bring you to this other
Mm.
place, and there is this NFT. Or another place that I've kind of noticed is more like in fashion or like in watches. Or you might, if there's only 11 of these watches being made, there's this um, uh, NFT that goes along with the watch, that's like the authenticity that shows like it goes along with you with this piece. And maybe if those kind of things start to happen in more of a commercial venue, it could seep a little bit more into the creative world. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, who we'll see how it all plays out with the whole traditional thing with the NFTs. Yeah, I don't know either. There's places in LA that are doing it and everything too. Yeah, I'm not familiar with San Fran art scene honestly at all. But
Yeah.
regardless of all that, I would love to hear more on a personal level again. Like in the studio, what your practice is. Like what is the practice of Gary Edward Blum on a day to day? And yeah, let's start there. Like, are you doing this work on a day to day? Are
Mm-hmm.
you going to a studio every day? You have a
Yeah.
studio?
So right now I'm actually in my house, which I've always had a live workspace. Not always. I've always enjoyed having a live workspace. Right before the pandemic hit, I had a beautiful studio that was kind of down by the ballpark. It was like, your huge 30-foot ceilings and, windows and, your typical kind of industrial space, but it was way across town. And I loved it because I like big spaces like that, but it was kind of hard to get to. And we live upstairs and we have this unit downstairs. And the person moved out, and I decided, you know what, I really like to be home. I like to just get up and like get to the studio, have coffee and get right to it instead of like this time in between. So right before the pandemic hit, I moved to this space, and that whole thing like shut down. And it was just like it's just the imperfect environment, perfect moment. So now my studio is here. So I kind of have this studio space in this one room, kind of more of a place where I kind of hang out and, do a little bit more like reading and cutting and looking at stuff, kind of a cleaner spot. So generally, yeah, just getting up in the morning, and right
That's
now,
dope.
yeah. So I got
That's
my
super
dog.
sick that, yeah, you found, so like, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, like you live upstairs from where you're at right now. And there
Yeah.
was like the unit below you opened up and you were able to like scoop it up and just turn that into your studio. So you kind of, but to go to your studio, you kind of leave your apartment every day and like walk down some stairs and go
Yeah.
into
So we
another
have,
apartment.
yeah, we have the house here. So yeah,
That's
we
amazing.
live upstairs.
That's super cool. I love it. Yeah,
um,
I too have always liked living in my studio. To be honest, I'd not had a studio outside of my house or like had a place where it's like I go. I've had studios where they weren't living studios that I just lived in anyway.
yeah.
They get warehouses, but there's something about it. I just can't imagine. But sometimes I romanticize the idea of like, I fucking wish I could leave here. I wish I could
Mhm.
fucking leave the studio. So it's both. But go ahead with your dog. But I do want to hear your take on that too. But you were going
No,
to say something about your
I'm
dog.
always, I mean, I'm a pretty solitary person. I mean, still that, I can be social, I can go to openings and, do all that sort of stuff, but my natural state of being is pretty solitary. So having a live workspace is kind of how I function best that way.
Yeah.
And so I haven't had that live workspace for a little while now. And while I was at the Headlands, that space was kind of away from home. When I had the other space across town, that's away from home, and I just found like it just doesn't work for me. There's a disconnect between like getting up, having your coffee, and just being able to be there. Or at night, if you just want to go and just sit and look. If your studio is somewhere else, it just doesn't work. I like to be around my work. I like to,
Yeah.
and I think that's what, like, speaking of kind of imbuing your work with your
Oh
essence.
yeah.
I think living with your work and being
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
your work, like, I personally feel like it just kind of like takes on something else. There's plenty of artists that have spaces other places, but me personally, that like being here, being in the studio, like whenever I want, is perfect. And when I moved into this space right at the beginning of the pandemic, it was so fortuitous because I started doing this whole series of salt prints, and I did more work, I would say, in the 4 months when we were really in lockdown than I probably did the whole previous year. It was just like this, like I connected with the space. I connected with like the whole process of like getting up, getting coffee, kind of hanging out, maybe looking at some books, and just getting at it. And if I didn't have like that live work space, I don't think that would have been what happened. Maybe it was because I hadn't had that situation for so long. It was like, oh shit, I'm back in my natural habitat of like live work. And it was awesome. It was just one of the most prolific and times, I guess, that I've had, probably not my artistic career, but in quite some time.
To me, it's always been the romanticized dream of being an artist, living in your studio space. It was never like going to a studio space or just having a studio space. It was like living in your studio. When I saw pictures of an artist studio and there was just a bed in the corner, like, to me, that was like the most idealistic possibility. The fact that I live that every day is like, it still blows my mind sometimes. Like the days when I don't have anything I have to do and I just get to wake up and work on exactly what I feel like it, and just have the coffee and just chill, and then fucking do. And also, living in your studio, of course, imbues your work with your presence, but like what you were saying, the spontaneity of being able to work at any time, I find important to my practice. Like waking up at 4 a.m. and being like, I can't fall back to sleep. Fuck it. I'm going to get up and just like take advantage of these 2 hours before everybody else is awake. Whereas if you had a studio somewhere else and you woke up at 4 a.m. and you wanted to work, even, it would be probably a pain in the ass, or you probably wouldn't do it, So like, you get the opportunities that you don't have kind of when you live around your work. Like, you always have opportunity. I want to ask a few more things on the personal level before we run out of time here. We have music I want to cover, like what you listen to, because I have a feeling that you probably have a rich taste in music. Let's start there. Music.
I was nervous about this. I thought you would ask me about nervous. No,
You're gonna say Coldplay or something.
No, no Coldplay. I'm not like the best. I listen to music all the time. I generally have music nonstop. I'm terrible like the names of music. I'd actually let me look and see what I have.
Have you been writing shit down?
No.
I like on your phone.
No, I'm looking at my phone. Because it really depends on like what part of something I'm doing. If it's manual labor, I might like something a little harder. If it's like I'm really being contemplative, it's something softer. Like I was kind of getting a little recently, kind of going back memory lane a little bit, like back to like college days when I was like, I don't know if you listened to like Peter Gabriel's Passion. It's super pretty melodramatic and pretty ambient kind of music. Do you know Tomahawk by any chance?
Yeah, that's a project of Mike Patton, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So Tomahawk on the opposite spectrum. Tomahawk is probably one of those, like, if I'm really like doing some manual labor stuff, I'll like get into that. But like right now, I'm looking at my list of stuff. I've got like Cat Power on here. I've got some Arvo Part here, Greg Brown, Jim White, a lot of classical stuff. Got some Gorillas. I went back and do you remember Bronski Beat at all? Do you know Bronski Beat? Kind of like
Bronski Beat.
Yeah. That's more like kind of like Erasure stuff,
Okay.
I don't know, man.
Do you like any of Mike Patton's other stuff? So for anybody who doesn't know Tomahawk or Mike Patton is the vocalist of Faith No More, which did rise to some fame at some point, but he's also done like Mr. Bungle recently, Dead Cross. So he gets into some more heavy metal, some more straightforward rock. Tomahawk, they would say, I think, is one of his more experimental projects.
Yeah, the Tomahawk Mit Gas is probably one of my favorite albums.
Interesting.
Ever.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's great, because I have never gotten into Tomahawk, to be honest. Like, I like Mike Patton. I've actually I've mic'd Mike Patton. I've met Mike Patton. I had lunch with him at the San Francisco MoMA. That's fucking funny.
Shit, really?
Yeah, in San Francisco last time I was there. 2018, 2016, something like that.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But anyways, what's the name of the Tomahawk album?
MIT Gas, MIT
Okay, cool.
space
I'm gonna check it
GAS.
out. Cool. Right
But
on.
yeah, and
I won't. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna press you on the music stuff.
I wish I could give you like more like, I've never been like the cool music guy, like that knows like, what's the coolest band happening, or,
Mhm.
I tend to like, I'll find something I like and just like listen to it like over and over again.
Yeah.
I kind
Sometimes
of,
I envy that.
yeah, I tend to be a little bit more on the mellow stuff, little more kind of the quieter sort of
Sure. I
music.
do respond to what you're
Um,
saying though about, and I think a lot of artists are like that. It depends on what you're working on will change the kind of music. I'm very much like almost maybe too much, in tune with that as well, where it's like very much depending on the kind of work, down to even just like the different styles. Like if I'm finger painting, I have to listen to just like the craziest metal because it has to be this very like raw process and
mhm.
everything. But if I'm, like you said, like I need to think a lot or something, I usually can't have vocals and then
Yeah,
like some sort of like repetitive beat. And so I listen to like electronic music is really good for thinking for me or something. So like I definitely respond to that. And if people haven't tried that, I would definitely say give it a shot because I use it like a drug, man. Like if I'm not producing like I want or something, before I give up or quit or just walk away, I'll try switching up the music or something, just like try to really use it. But I
yeah.
want to
There's
use that
definitely
maybe as a
something powerful about having the right kind of sound to
yeah.
kind of trigger a certain part of your brain. Because
Even
I don't know.
vibration, if you just take it like on a very physical term, the vibration of it, like if you want dissonance in your work, listen to dissonant, crazy music. If you want harmony in your work, listen to something that's very, has beautiful harmonics or whatever, or is more in tune or pleasing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I want to use that as a conduit though, too, like as a way to wrap this up and bring it all full circle.
yeah.
Like the content of your work, we haven't really, we talked about like the superficial content. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
What about the deeper meanings that you're getting to or alluding to within your work? And I think this might be could be a pretty big topic. And
Yeah.
your work could almost be seen almost like somewhat of Rorschach's in ways, but your a lot of your photos are foggy, which I'm sure has a lot to do with your environment. San Francisco tends to be foggy, it seems like
Mhm.
at least.
Yeah.
But what sort of meaning is imbued into these pieces? What sort of existential, maybe not existential, but what sort of philosophical, maybe is the word, thoughts or ideas that are backing the work, or as you're working, are you thinking about? Because when I'm working in those kind of ways and working in composition and even these more design oriented, a lot of the time those things are very steeped in philosophy and
Mhm.
how the way that you're bringing it all together, and definitely the mood of the photos definitely adds a weight. And I would like to hear what is the message, I guess, or not even the message, but what are you imbuing into these pieces?
I mean, I touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but it's definitely I would say I went to India way back in 2000, and kind of it really kind of triggered this kind of east west um, duality thing that I kind of talked about.
Yes, yes, you
Um,
touched on duality.
and that is probably the major force that's always been in my work, and having balance within the work being kind of meditative. Composition is always a part of it, but having things that are playing off of each other. Even like the one that's right behind my head, that's an island in the Galapagos. It's just like this
It's a perfect,
it's
it's a
this
perfect
massive,
photo.
yeah, it's this massive, like heavy earth thing. And not in this particular one, but balancing it with some pink, just a shade of pink on the other
Or like,
side.
I don't know, I can't see maybe if there's anything there, but I just like the space. Like to me, it's like heavy rock, whatever, and then just that empty space as like the balance, and then you almost have it as a perfect three quarters. So it'd be like, a three-quarter white, one quarter rock is
Yeah.
like the balance or something. So you have a scale there or something. That's what I see.
Yeah. So I think in all of my work, it just, I don't have, I don't think I have like some huge message that I'm trying to like convey to a viewer.
Is
I
it
think
almost amplifying what's already there?
yeah, or just trying to show maybe some subtleties, maybe making some comparisons, things that you may not know you're exactly pinpoint what you're feeling, but it gives you a certain sensation. Like a lot of my stuff is centered. A lot of my things feel
Hmm.
meditative or balanced.
Hmm.
There's that, I think all my work tries to like focus in on something that I can have a little bit more, I can control a little bit. Because in my life and in my head, there's a lot of agitation and things that are happening. So in my artwork, I try and kind of bring a sense of calm to it. That's why a lot of times, like with the fog or a light background, like I don't really like to take pictures with like clouds in the sky. It drives me
Hmm.
crazy. Like I just
Hmm.
prefer to have something, like
Hmm.
a soft
Flat,
gray, a
yeah.
flat gray in the background. It's kind of a more of a graphic feel. It's a
Yep.
soothing feeling. Um,
I
so
explained that to my dad like not long ago, like because he was always like back in Wisconsin. I would go out and always shoot photos of the fog, and he didn't, like, why do you only go out when it's foggy in the morning at night? And then he started seeing it. He started sending me pictures in the fog, and he started understanding. I thought it was adorable, honestly. But I get it about fog. Like creates
yeah,
this perfect field for more graphic photo.
yeah,
Um, and I definitely get a more Eastern vibe from your work,
yeah,
Um, I'm thinking of, I don't what style of it or what time frame it was, but like the very gestural paintings of nature, often more tall and narrow than wide, but where there would be mountains kind of in a fog and trees, and it was very gestural and everything, but it would be grand. And then like the person or like the character was very tiny, to like what they were drawing attention to. It's kind of it feels similar in
that's like a lot
ways
of
to like
like sounds like like the Japanese screen paintings are a lot like that, where
exactly, yeah, stuff
they
like that.
kind of have that mood. I mean, there's no doubting like seeping into all of my work is that design background and the grid and
Well,
three quarters. Like I naturally will cut things into threes.
yeah.
I will
Well,
have
once that's implanted into your eye, I like to think of it, how you can turn the grid on your phone
yeah,
where you can like, do you want the grid? Like once that's that's burnt into my eyeballs. Like I can't
yeah,
turn that off. Every time I look at anything, it's fucking doing that. It's annoying as shit sometimes, right?
it is.
But like I wish I could turn it off because I'll just be on the phone sometimes and like staring at angles and be like, that
Oh
thing
my
looks
god,
off. And I go,
I was
and then like I'll just have to like get up like 5 hours later and be like, boom. And just be like, okay, it's fine, it's perfect. No, but
I was literally
it's
gonna
so funny.
say I was gonna say that exact thing. Like I can like right now I'm like looking at the top of my computer and I'm lining it up with a book that's
Yep.
on the right
Yeah,
behind it. Like
I'm looking at this back thing, just constantly being like, is it level? Like, should it be up a little bit?
oh, this was driving me nuts. Like I don't know. This was like the angle was wrong.
Oh my
I was
God, we're acting
this
out our OCD in
trying to
real
get this,
time.
and I was like, I hated that the video was like, how do I get that to straighten up? Like if I have to be like that, I guess I don't know.
Oh, this is
I in
priceless.
the background there, like
Just
these weren't like I was like Jesse's gonna see this. Like so last night I was like, okay, I gotta get out the level and make these nice and level, put the spaces right.
oh my God,
And
that's
I was like,
so
what the
fucking
fucking
funny.
lines are like the perspectives all off. I was
It's
like,
so
okay,
funny. This is priceless. I'm gonna screenshot that whole interaction. It's two OCD guys with lines in their screens. But it's the perfect like example of what it's like when once you start seeing in that way, how you
yeah.
just can't turn it off and how it can cause kind of like I like to overly romanticize it to be like it causes issues, like it's a fucking problem. Like, it's like
Oh yeah,
but yeah.
I've had lots of issues where with partners and like I'll
Oh
put
yeah.
I'll put this thing like right here like this, and then like an hour later it's like somehow got moved over here, and I'm like, no, I put it there for a reason. Like that's where it's supposed to be. Why'd you move it?
I feel you very deeply.
um,
Yeah, I often call it like a sacrifice. Like relationships have been a sacrifice of my artistic career, and just like the amount that I've wanted to just like lean into some of that kind of shit, because after a
I love
while you're
it.
like,
I love
yeah,
it.
it's a
I
burden, but
love it.
like I would not change that for the world. I absolutely love it. Like it feels like a superpower sometimes.
Do you know?
Sometimes the ability to line up perfectly a dead center or something just with my eye in almost any instance,
Oh
to
yeah.
me, it freaks me out sometimes, even how scarily perfect I can get
Hmm.
that with just my
Yeah.
eye. So
Yeah. Do you know? I know you won't probably got to get going, but do you know Tom
no, no.
Sachs, the artist Tom Sachs?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know his term always be knolling? Knolling?
yeah,
K N
yeah,
O double
yes,
L, and it's like his like in his studio, like all this everything has to be like nice and lined up and
yes.
like
Because
perfect
knowing means,
to
what is
line
knowing?
to just to have things just like nice, and I think it's after a furniture designer, like having things
Okay,
like perfectly. I can't do it. Having things like
yeah.
perfectly like lined up and relating to each
That's what
other,
I,
and
yeah,
filling a space with certain
yeah. That's
objects.
what I thought, and I definitely heard that term many times before, and I definitely, intuitively knew what it meant or whatever. Kind of reminds me of kerning or something, where it's like you place the
Exactly.
letters, perfectly. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah,
Exactly.
Tom Sachs always be knowing. Yeah, I mean, that's. Wow, yeah, I forgot about that. I should look into Tom Sachs a little bit more. Tom Sachs does a lot of NFT stuff and is Web3 active quite a
Oh
bit.
yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
I'll definitely
Yep.
look into him a little bit more.
He's super
Um,
active actually.
and
Um,
that's such a great observation. I mean, I have a grid, I mean, right here, just sitting around constantly like a cutting board. I have grids just sitting around, and I'm constantly doing that. My phone, and then my iPad, or my iPhone, my iPad, and then the
mhm.
lighter and the ashtray and the joints are even lined up next to it. It's just everything.
It's
It's like,
gotta be lined up.
like I was talking with my therapist not long ago about how like organization is a part of my practice. I've just kind of like accepted and like included it now, where I don't even like when I'm sweeping outside, even I consider that's part of my art practice.
Yeah.
When I'm organizing my studio, like when I don't know what to make and I don't know what I'm doing, and I just literally spend 4 hours organizing my studio and feel completely like satisfied after that. I'm like, that was my art for the day. That was, and
That's
like I
actually when
feel
getting back to that
the most,
studio, like what's your
yeah.
studio life like? It's getting in the morning, like maybe the first thing I might do is just kind of go around and kind of organize a little bit and get
And it's such a
associated
great
with the
way to like
space.
see what you've all been working on, kind of. You kind of
Hmm.
see some old things in a new light, or you'll come across something that you forgot about, maybe. Like
Hmm.
I kind of always have in progress stuff constantly floating around in bins and stuff. And like if I'm come across those things, sometimes it will just, because so many times you walk away from something and thinking that you don't have anything, and you come back to it a week later and it's like that's the coolest thing ever. So I feel like the organization kind of plays into that practice of forcing yourself to revisit things and continue the cycles of the pieces and everything like that. um yeah, I like our studio practice sounds very similar, especially like the romanticized aspect of we're very privileged to be able to do it, like, to live this life. Do you romanticize it quite a bit? Are you pretty grateful for your
Oh
position?
God, yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, I think the older I get, like, that very first show that I sold out, I was like, I'm like 26 years old or something. I'm like, whatever, this is like cake, this whole art thing. And over time you just start to realize like, wow, I'm doing this work, I'm making this work, this is my life.
Yeah.
And the longer it goes on, the more like every time I get a sale, even with doing like NFTs, like they sell. I'm like I'm grateful for that. Like I just think it's like
Absolutely.
it's such a privilege to have someone, particularly like with physical paintings, but like you're buying this thing, you're going to live with it. Like that's like an honor that someone will buy something from you, like and have it in their space. Like that's going to be with them like every single day. They're going to see that thing every single day. Like that's a beautiful thing, to be
Hmm.
able to be in that position and have people like your work enough to want to live with it. So yeah,
So
I appreciate it for sure.
I want to just parlay that then into your TES practice, and selling there, and what has that changed in your overall practice? Like how has your life and practice changed since entering into Web3?
I'm geeking out big time over it. Like I have to actually kind of get myself to get out of it because I'm like constantly thinking about it. And like it's the perfect storm of for me of like physical, digital, you know, cryptocurrency, like getting into something new, even like playing around with like, you know, being on Twitter, like even as maddening as it can be, like learning about it and that whole ecosystem and, you know, meeting other artists and, you know, coming, by the way, thank you for having me here. And Fake
Of
Whales
course.
is awesome. I think Fake Whale is like one of the coolest things that I've come across so far.
Number one, man.
It's just amazing with like what's happening and the whole vibe of it and
Yeah,
like
man.
the artists that you are interested in and that are showing or are they're all some of my
FakeWhale.
favorite
Yep.
artists.
Undisputed
um,
champions.
um,
FakeWhale.
yeah,
No cap.
it's amazing. It's amazing. So that in general is just like, you know, taking up a lot of my practice to be
It is the
honest.
perfect
And
storm. I feel like it's the perfect storm that has happened. And for me, you know, I've said it so many times, perfect evolution. But it feels like the world just got bigger. It feels like
yeah,
it pushed both directions, and it feels like the further my practice goes into Web3, like the further that my physical practice is going as well, or something. Like something's happening with
yeah,
my physical practice, and even the way that people see my physical practice now
yeah,
that I'm entered into Web3. So it really is to me like this really exciting time, and I was wondering if you were feeling that similar,
yeah.
you
Because
know,
it's when
where
I got it.
it hasn't even sparked yet. Like it's
No,
sparking, but it hasn't even ignited yet.
no. I'm super excited about it. I think it's when I first got out of college, I thought like, okay, I'm going to do like illustration, I'm going to do design, I'm going to paint, I'm going to do all this stuff. I got into the real world, and it's like, no, I need to really focus on, you know, something. I can't do both things. Like I can't be an artist and a designer. With this, with Web3, it just feels like all these things can come together and live harmoniously
Hmm.
along with like the
Yeah.
social aspect of it and the
Yep.
connectivity with other artists. Like the idea that I
You're able to
can
show like the life
I
of
can
an
show
artist
million
and
yeah,
more dynamically.
yeah, you can show all that stuff. You can connect with people all over the world. You know, anyone that has a computer can like connect with you and can DM you. And I feel like it's a place where like before maybe people would be like, I don't want to, you know, be involved in that. Like here, it's just like such a part of life. And you can, you know, you can
Hmm.
connect into it, you can connect out of it, and the whole kind of organism is like super satisfying. And I literally have to kind
Incredibly
of
satisfying.
it's satisfying. I actually have to stop myself. Like sometimes I'm like, dude, like, you know, back away, like, you know, go do something
You know
else.
what
And
happens is, for me, is that throughout the day, like that my hands get too dirty to use computers or phones or whatever, and I just
uh,
exist like that for a long period of time because I don't want to wash my hands all the time. So
yeah,
that's really beneficial, honestly. They're like, you can really track my usage of social media and like and stuff like that, because like in the middle of the day, like there's a long period where I'm just not on because my hands are always really like, full of paint and I just put it away or whatever. But
yeah.
that's beautiful, man. I feel the same way. We're lucky to be here, lucky to be early. What's next for you? What's coming up? Do you have any big drops? Is there anything you'd like to promote, physical or digital? Or should we just keep following you? Obviously, follow you on Twitter. Consistent drops on Object.
Hmm.
So definitely pay attention to all that. But besides all that,
Um, I took a little bit of a break, but I have quite a few things I think coming up with Object and drops that are coming up that I'm pretty
cool.
excited about. The main thing I'm been working on right now is actually the physical printed piece of this that's behind me. So I'm getting ready to launch that finally after like months and months and months. I was having this thing printed over in Greece, and
Oh
it was
wow.
yeah, it was not the I mean, I loved the people that did it, and it was great. They're like this family and family owned printers and brothers doing it, but it just took a really long time. But I'm finally gonna get
So
that up and running and
great.
have those for sale and all that
Don't
sort
want to
of
cut
stuff.
you
So
off,
that's
but I do want to just ask
yeah.
specifically, do you have physical objects and goods such as zines and books? 'Cause I saw you just had like a newsprint magazine or a book that dropped, or you were printing one or whatever. Do you have a shop or anywhere that people can purchase your physical
I'm
goods?
just Not yet. I'm working on it like right now. So I'm gonna get my website set up to sell these things that just got printed. Um,
In the interim, where do you sell them, or like how are you moving them? Local
I
distributors, and
no, I have them in my studio right now. Like
you just have them laying
I
around.
literally just got them, so I need to
Okay.
get on top of that. I'll
How
sell them
about your
through.
past stuff? Because you have zines and stuff in the past, right, or books and things?
Not that I really sell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I don't have any of that stuff. It's one of the things over the last year or so that I really feel like I wanted to get back into is making books and
Yeah, man. A
making
bulk of your
zines
shit would be sick, dude. It'd
um,
be sick way to take in your work. It really would be.
yeah, so that's something I'm excited about. And then just to be honest, like it's been a long road, and one of the things that's been great about Web3 is like having a creative outlet, because for the first time in like I can't remember when, probably since I first started, I don't have any gallery representation, and because I'm kind of switching from like that painting world into photography, which um, I had a gallery here in San Francisco, and that kind of went sideways, so I don't have that anymore. So kind of wanting to kind of step back into the gallery world, as crazy as some people might think that is. I love it.
No, man. I'm doing it.
I
I'm doing
love
that
doing.
too.
Yeah, so I'm focusing on those two things right now, is kind of getting my photography stuff together in a fashion and that's part of it. This printed piece is kind of part of that, to kind of approach some galleries and kind of get back into that. But it's like dating. It's been a while, so it's a little like, how do people date
That's
these
funny.
days?
Fuck, man.
You
I
can't just
mean,
roll
for
into a
real,
gallery
dude.
anymore. But
Dude, it is like dating
um,
though too, because when you're with one, sometimes it feels like you're like in a fucking partner, like a life partnership or something where, oh yeah, man, it really does feel like a
yeah.
relationship, man. That's funny. Yeah, I'm
Uh,
trying to like I'm not trying to get back into showing physically, not trying to get back into it, but and I'm not trying to get back into galleries, but I don't have gallery representation for the first time now in a while either.
mm,
I never had representation per se, but I'm not working with a gallery anymore for the first time in a long time,
yeah,
and I'm trying to do a show, or not trying. I'm going to do a show next year, and
cool.
kind of do it outside of the gallery affiliation. Try to do
Well,
the the dream of the, or what we were sold as the dream of the NFT Web3 thing, right?
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
try it. I'm gonna give it a shot.
yeah.
We'll see how it
It
goes.
it's one of those. It's kind of like a catch-22. There's something really I really loved about, like, okay, I don't have any gallery pressure. While that might be like, oh, I love being in galleries and all that stuff, but there is a certain amount of pressure that's involved in having shows. And once you don't have that, you have this kind
Well, you
of
get
freedom to do
curators,
whatever you want.
and
You
you
don't
get
have to.
curators that, and this isn't anything against a good curator, honestly, but curators start thinking that they're equal artists, that this is an equal collaboration, that once the artwork enters the gallery, at least, I'm doing like installation type stuff and everything too,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
the gallerist that I was working with, and every gallerist I work with, always feels that they're this co-creator, in which in a sense it makes sense kind of, but when you're so connected to your work, you don't, and then they're like, we're going to show that like this and that, and you're like, fuck off, nah, like I
Yeah,
don't. And that, I didn't like collaborating with galleries, honestly. I wasn't looking to really collaborate. Like, it was like, put your opinion in, but I'm gonna have to say. I always
yeah.
had like a fierce independence that never went well with the gallery world. So
I've had the gamut of great galleries and really cool gallerists, and some that just aren't so great, that selling work and not telling you, all those
sometimes
like
getting
all
paid
those
from a gallery. That's one
oh
thing with the gallery I was working with. I'll give it to them. Always great with paying, but like some galleries, it's like, yo, you sold that work like a year ago. Like,
mhm,
where's the money? And then you hear
yeah,
stories too. That was pretty hot for a minute. That a lot of galleries weren't paying the artists. They were like, they were buying other shit and like not telling the artists where their money was and stuff. Have you heard about all that kind of stuff? Like, there was a lot of nasty shit.
I've experienced it.
Okay, we don't
Which
need
is
to get
what which
into
is,
it or
yeah.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
we could
okay.
talk about that another time, but yeah, it's not to bash galleries, because once again, like, you know, there's good and bad people in the world, and there's good and bad galleries in the
Yeah,
world,
yeah.
and you know,
And
you just
there's like, to be fair too, in the NFT space and then the Web3 space, there's bad actors there too.
yeah,
There's bad curators there too. You
yeah,
know, we're going to have it everywhere or whatever. But
yeah,
it does. This Web3 space is exciting, and the autonomy that we're given, and the ability
yeah.
to make it without those avenues, hopefully, you know,
I love it.
is what. Yeah.
It's got to be one of the top things about it is just an artist for the first time being able to like curate their own work, be their own gatekeeper, do what they want to do, set the price, set the
Hmm.
resale, you
Hmm.
know, release as much as you want or as little as you want, the additions that you want, you know, connect with the people that you want. Like that's connect with people. Oh, like I said before, I think that's like one of the coolest
Yeah.
things is like a gallery has their set and that's what they're good at. You know, they have you, they have your work because they have the client, the collectors that, you know, like your work or the style of work, but it only goes so far. And you know, there's things that they can do for you, of course. But with Web3, like being able to connect with people all over the world is an awesome thing. You know, it's still to this day, like thinking about like, wow, someone could be looking at my work, like Nate is in Australia. We're like, you know, we're like good friends now. We're like, we watch a Warriors game, like the Gold State, like basketball, and he's like, we're like DMing each other, like he's in Australia and I'm here, like you know, like that never would have
Yeah.
happened unless like you know something like this was around, and doing things like this is, you know, I maybe we could have connected if I came down or you came up here, but
Hmm.
you know, like life is life, and you know things are happening, but you know, with this, it just really feels like you know it brings people together and more than like gallery stuff and
Oh, for sure.
it's really fun. I feel fortunate to you know be here like right now
Me too. Yeah,
and be a
exactly.
part of
Like to
it.
be here right now in this moment is
It's
like really
fun.
special. Yeah,
It's fun.
totally. It's
It's
fun.
fun. It's like the
I think
advent
that's a
of
great
a
place.
new technology.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to call it here. We could talk forever, obviously, but one more thing though. You mentioned Golden State. How they doing?
How are they doing? We're not playing quite yet, so I haven't really been paying
How they
attention to
looking
that.
then? They going to be good this
Uh,
season? Or are they going to? What are they going? What's going to happen with Golden State? I lost track of Golden State because it seemed like during the pandemic they were like, we're just going to sit it out. We're good,
well, they
you know.
won the whole thing last year, so
Yep,
you
exactly.
know,
Yeah,
so
they came back. What
we
about this
still have
year?
the core three together
Yeah.
with Steph and Clay and Draymond. We'll see how they go with the younger guys. I think that was kind of the we're in the transition period of those guys kind of being on their
Yep.
backside of their career, and then the younger guys. So there's this mix of young blood, old blood.
Oh boy, it
But
was fun watching a few years ago when they were like oh man, when they were winning the champions back to back. That was some like highlight reel nonstop, man. Those playoffs were so fun to watch. I was
yeah,
captivated. I
yeah,
was captivated.
yeah.
You know, I don't even
They're
like Steph Curry, and I was like, that dude is just a angel. Like,
yeah. Yeah, they're very fortunate. What's another fortunate thing in the Bay Area is that to be able to watch them, and whether you like Steph Curry or not, like the dude's badass. I mean, changing the
it's like
game, and
watching otherworldly event. It's like it can be
yeah,
spiritual. That those playoffs sometimes were spiritual for me, and because I just love the sport of basketball, and I love
hmm
playing particularly,
oh
and
yeah,
just watching the way that especially the core three moved together was just,
yeah,
it felt like you were watching something that was, otherworldly, unexplainable, not going to see that again, kind of like how a school of fish moves so perfectly or something, that's what you
yeah,
were watching. It was just like, what the fuck? But
yep,
not to
yep.
get on a rant about that. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, man.
Gary, can you, where can we find you? Just tell people real quick, Instagram, Twitter, because that's where you'll promote everything. We're going to be able to find your physical works,
Yeah,
your NFTs, print.
everything's through Twitter now. But it's Twitter, Instagram, and my website is all Gary Edward Blum.
You guys have it. There
All
you
those
go.
all those things. So you check me out
Wonderful.
there.
Gary, thank you for spending some time with
All right,
us
man.
today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Long
it's been great.
overdue.
All right, man.